Hello everyone, and welcome to the weird, scary and horrible parts of humanity. Today we are going to look at the Port Arthur Massacre, which, committed by then 28-year-old Martin John Bryant of Hobart, Tasmania, became the worst massacre in the history of Australia. Living in his native Hobart, Tasmania, one of the 8 states and territories in Australia, John Martin Bryant awoke at 6 a.m. on the 28th of April 1996, a day which would live on in the history of Australia. This was highly unusual according to his girlfriend, who left the house at 8 a.m. to visit her parents, as Bryant, with an IQ of 66, akin to the bottom 10% of 11-year-olds, was unable to hold down a job. He travelled to the Seascape, a hotel which his late father, Maurice Bryant, who had committed suicide, attempted to buy before the current owners, Nolene and David Martin, bought the property. Maurice Bryant complained to his son that the Martins had double-dealed him. Martin Bryant offered to buy another property from the Martins at Palmer's Lookout Road, with Bryant having acquired $570,000 from his former friend Helen Harvey, who died in a car crash, who was heiress to the Tatterstall's lottery fortune. However, the couple declined. Bryant believed that the Martins had bought the property to hurt his family, and believed this event to be the catalyst for his father's depression and suicide in 1993. Bryant described the Martins as very mean people and the worst people in my life. Bryant went inside the Seascape Hotel and fired several shots. He gagged David Martin and stabbed him. It is believed that this was Martin's first 2 killings. Locking the doors and taking the keys to the Seascape properties, Bryant drove to Port Arthur, a former convict settlement on the port of Tasmania and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. From 1833 until 1877, it was the destination for the hardest British criminals, with Australia having been colonised by the British as a penal colony in 1788. At around 1:10 p.m, Bryant got in line at the toll booth, paid the entry fee, and parked near the Broad Arrow Cafe, moving his car to another area following instructions from the site security manager. Carrying a sports-type bag and a video camera, Bryant went into the cafe and purchased a meal, which he ate on the deck outside as he attempted to start conversations with fellow diners on the lack of white Anglo-Saxon Protestants and Japanese tourists. Having finished his meal, Bryant put his bag on the table and took out a Colt AR-15 SP1 carbine with a Colt scope and one 30-round magazine attached. He immediately shot Mo Yi-ung and Su Len Chung, Malaysian tourists, who were sitting at the table beside him, killing them instantly. He then proceeded to shoot 21-year-old Elizabeth Scott in the back of the head. Bryant then shot Anthony Nightingale in the neck and spine, who stood up following the sound of the first shot. Bryant then fired one shot that killed Kevin Vincent Sharp, with a second shot hitting Walter Bennett and passing through Raymond John Sharp. All 3 of them had their back to Bryant and had no idea what was happening. Bryant then shot Tony Kiston and Andrew Millis, who had not had time to move away, with Kiston having been able to push his wife away prior to the shot, who hid under the table. A sense of panic and fear enveloped the entire cafe, as people did not know what to do, and Bryant blocked the exits, preventing others from leaving, with a second exit door locked. Bryant then shot to death Sarah Collier, with her parents Graham Collier and Carolyn Luton surviving severely injured. Bryant then shot Mervyn Howard, who was seated, and his wife Mary Howard. In the space of just 15 to 30 seconds, Bryant had murdered 12 people and wounded 10. Bryant then moved to the gift shop and shot 2 local women who worked in the shop, Nicole Burgess and Elizabeth Howard. He then shot Dennis Lever. Ron Jerry and Peter Nash attempted to escape with his wife through a locked exit. Thinking that Bryant had left, Jason Winter was shot in the hand, neck and chest, which killed him. American tourist Dennis Olson was injured from fragments from the bullet. Bryant then walked back to the cafe, returning to the gift shop, and shot Ronald Jarry, Peter Nash, and Pauline Masters hiding in the corner. In just 90 to 120 seconds, 29 rounds had been fired, with 22 people killed and 12 injured. During the cafe shooting, staff members escaped through the kitchen and alerted people outside, who hid around tour coaches and near buildings. Bryant moved towards the coaches, shooting driver Royce Thompson in the back. Thompson crawled and rolled under a bus to safety, but later died of his wounds. Bryant quickly moved from coach to coach, indiscriminately shooting at people, with Winifred Alpin running to get cover behind the coach, shot on the side. Bryant then shot Janet Quinn, where she fell to the ground, injured and unable to move. Bryant then went to his vehicle and changed his weapon to a self-loading rifle, firing at individuals hiding around their cars. Unable to hide from the preclusion of Bryant due to the height of their cars, people ran into the bushes and survived. Bryant returned to the coaches and killed a wounded Janet Quinn. Bryant then went on to one of the buses where people were hiding and he shot Eva Gaylord. Neville Quinn had escaped into the jetty area but returned to the coach for his wife. With Bryant spotting Mr. Quinn, he commenced chasing him around the coaches before Quinn entered a coach. Bryant entered the coach, pointed the gun at Quinn and stated, "No one gets away from me." Quinn ducked with the bullet missing his head but shooting him in the neck, momentarily paralysing him. After Bryant left, Quinn managed to find his wife, who died in his arms, with Mr. Quinn surviving. Frantically, tourists ran around attempting to hide, unaware of where Bryant was, as the gunfire was difficult to pinpoint and people were unable to find their cars. Bryant, by this stage, had killed 26 people and injured a further 18. He then got back into his yellow Volvo 224 and left, sounding his horn and waving. As he drove towards the toll point, he saw Nanette McCack and Madeline and Lana McCack, aged 3 and 6 respectively. Thinking he had driven up to help them, McCack moved towards the car, with Bryant stopping his car, stepping out, and forcing Nanette McCack to get down on her knees. She implored him, "Please don't hurt my babies," with Bryant killing Nanette. He then shot Madeline. Alana ran behind a tree with Bryant following her and shooting her. This led numerous prisoners to hate and despise Bryant, according to fellow convicts, as he had indiscriminately murdered unarmed children. Incredibly, cars had not been stopped coming down from the toll booth towards Port Arthur, with Bryant blocking a 1980 BMW 7 Series E23 owned by Mary Rose Nixon. Inside were Nixon, driver Russell James Pollard, and passengers Helen and Robert Graham Saltzman. Bryant shot all 4 individuals at the toll booth. Bryant then abandoned his Volvo 244 for the BMW 7 Series, as well as his Daewoo shotgun and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. By this stage, he had murdered 33 people and injured 19. As he furiously drove up the highway, he reached a service station where Graham Sutherland, whose car Bryant shot at, attempted to warn occupants. Bryant then cut off a white Toyota Corolla attempting to exit onto the highway, driven by Glenn Pierce and his girlfriend Zoe Hall. Grabbing his rifle, Bryant attempted to pull Hall from his Toyota Corolla. Pierce got out and approached Bryant, with Bryant locking Pierce in the boot of his BMW before proceeding to kill Zoe Hall. The service station attendant locked the main doors and grabbed his rifle, but before he could retrieve ammunition, Bryant had left with his BMW and Pierce in the boot. Local policemen arrived shortly thereafter, with only 2 police stationed on the peninsula at Nabina and Dunalley, both attending a hoax emergency call at Saltwater River. Shooting at cars and non-fatally wounding the occupants, Bryant drove to the seascape, handcuffing Pierce to the stair rail at approximately 2 p.m, setting the BMW alight, with police arriving at around the same time. With Bryant shooting indiscriminately, the 2 policemen hid in the ditch. At around 9 p.m. that night, police and the Special Operations Group arrived and did not fire for fear of hitting hostages. An 18-hour standoff ensued, with Bryant requesting a helicopter and to be flown to Adelaide, South Australia, noting that he would only keep Nolene and Martin and release Pierce. The cordless phone Bryant was using to communicate with the police went dead that evening. Bryant then set fire to the house on the 29th of April 1996, running out with his clothes on fire and suffering burns to his back and bum. It was discovered that Pierce had been shot during or before the standoff. A total of 35 people were killed, with 24 non-fatal injuries. Prime Minister John Howard enacted stricter gun laws through the National Firearms Programme Implementation Act 1996, and the country seeing one mass shooting since then, when, on the 4th of June 2019, Benjamin Glenn Hoffman killed 4 people in Darwin in the Northern Territory. Originally pleading not guilty, Bryant changed his plea to guilty on the 19th of November 1996 and was sentenced to 35 sentences of life imprisonment for each count of murder and sentenced to 25 years for the remaining 36 charges on 5 other offences, including attempted murders, grievous bodily harm, the infliction of wounds, aggravated assault, and unlawfully setting fire to property. Bryant serves his sentence at Hobart's Riston prison, where he remains in solitary confinement, and his prison papers note that he is never to be released. While in prison, he was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome. The massacre led to unprecedented changes to Australia's gun laws. The National Firearms Agreement was implemented, an agreement between the federal Australian government and the government of all 8 Australian states and territories. This act placed tighter control on semi-automatic and fully automatic weapons, as well as the launch of a gun buyback provision from October 1996 to September 1997, with the removal of almost 650,000 firearms. Additionally, the National Handgun Control Amendment of 2002 saw the surrendering of 68,727 handguns nationally as part of a 6-month national handgun buyback scheme in 2003. Furthermore, the 2017 National Firearms Amnesty saw the surrendering of a further 51,000 unregistered firearms during a 3-month period. With Australia seeing no mass gun shootings that were not family-side and did not have more than 4 casualties since 1996, it has been widely seen as a resounding success story for other countries, with numerous other countries encouraged to adopt similar legislation. But what caused such a tragedy, which still today is one of the deadliest mass shootings in the world carried out by a single gunman? As previously mentioned, Bryant had a borderline mental disability with an IQ of 66 and was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome while in prison. He was also known to be suicidal, having stated in late 1995 that he had had enough and "I just felt more people were against me. When I tried to be friendly toward them, they just walked away." He had been known to increase his consumption of alcohol 6 months prior to the massacre. At his court hearing on the 19th of November 1996, Bryant noted that he had been planning the massacre for 4 to 12 weeks. However, Bryant's actual motivation remains a closely guarded secret and is only known by his lawyer, John Avery. In his book, Avery claimed that Bryant was largely motivated by media reports of the Dunblane School massacre, which took place just 6 weeks prior. Indeed, the media at the time drew correlations between both massacres. Both communities exchanged items to place at their respective memorials, with Port Arthur largely seen as the manifestation of a copycat effect due to the saturation of media coverage on the Dunblane massacre. Prime Minister of the United Kingdom John Major reached out to his Australian counterpart John Howard over the shared tragedy due to the proximity in time and the devastation of the event on both countries. Taking place just 6 weeks before the Port Arthur Massacre on 13 March 1996, the Dunblane Massacre was the worst massacre in the history of the United Kingdom. We will explore the Dunblane Massacre in a future video. Thank you for watching. Please do yourself a favour and hit that like and subscribe button and the bell icon to inform you when new videos come out. It helps more than you know, and your support is truly appreciated. Until next time, stay awesome, stay classy, and be kind to everyone you meet, and have an amazing day.